And we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking About Survivor. I am Christiana Ellis.
I'm Mike Mateen.
Tonight, we're talking about Survivor Season 35, Episode 4. And I don't know if you felt the same, but I felt like this episode was kind of a marked step up from the first couple.
Yes. Yes, the mix-up helped. But I think what the mix-up did was to get everybody out of their comfort zone. You know, when you talk about like group dynamics of, forming, norming, storming, this got them out of they'd done the forming, they were starting to get into the norming. This shakes it up and takes the norming phase out because now you have to do stuff. Mm-hmm. You can't settle into that routine.
Yeah.
And I know that ostensibly the reason behind the mix-up was that one tribe was starting to get significantly depleted. And we've seen when they've carried that out to its end that it's not interesting. The
right.
ones where they actually went down to where there was just the one person left.
Yep. Stephanie LaGrossa.
Yes, it was interesting to kind of see that it happened, but it wasn't that good. It wasn't something you want to see all the time.
Well, and at a certain point, too, the fewer people you have, the less interesting your challenges can be.
Right. The less interesting the challenges can be. It becomes more and more lopsided as you lose people because essentially the other team's got a bigger bench. So if you have to do back-to-back challenges that are both 4 people and they can rotate everybody and you have to perform in both of them, you're going to continue to lose and it's going to get even more and more out of control.
Yeah.
We've seen that. We've already had that experiment. It wasn't that cool. So again, that's the ostensible reason why they chose to do it this early was because that tribe was small.
Yeah. It's also not that early. I mean, episode 4, there's plenty of seasons where I think they've done that.
I guess, yeah, when you have the 3 tribes, you do mix them up earlier because you either mix them into 2 early or you mix them up because they do start to get smaller faster, just even it is spread out.
Yep. I was curious whether they were going to mix up and sort back into 3 or if they were going to maybe go 3 tribes to 2.
That's, I was curious about that too.
Yeah, they may still have that up their sleeve. Maybe that'll happen again pre-merge.
Yeah, they can hold that again for another, if something starts to get out of hand in a week or 2, they have another go-to.
Yeah. Keep everybody on their toes. When we talk about Luna is all over me right now. She's just wanting something. Just a rare Luna cameo for everyone on Talking About Survivor here. If I can actually aim the camera properly. How are you doing, little dog?
Luna.
So we kind of surprisingly just went right into the mix-up. There was no, not even the Hustler tribe coming back from camp, dealing with Patrick being gone. There was just nothing. It was just straight into it before the credits even.
Yeah, I think they just had a lot of good stuff to get to. Mm-hmm. It's not like they don't have content from them returning after the vote.
Right, yeah. But I think what it may have been, too, is just that whatever they maybe talked about might have all been, unneeded once the mix-up was going to happen, right? If they're only talking about, oh, what are we going to do next with this group of people? And then the mix-up happens, so it's not that group of people anymore. So maybe they just felt that none of what was discussed ended up mattering. And I kind of, I found myself just then consciously trying to avoid rendering it moot. Anyway.
Not going there.
Yep. So we just jumped right into the mix-up. So our new tribes, I believe they kept. Honestly, I didn't pay any attention to the tribe names before, other than heroes, healers, hustlers. But it matters now. So what we have is blue, which I believe is Lidu, which is Alan, Desi, Ashley, Joe, and Devin. And then, as becomes very relevant later, that represents 2 healers, 2 heroes, and 1 hustler. And then the new red tribe, Yawa, is Jessica, Mike, Cole, Lauren, and Ben. Ben being the solo hero, and also of note that Cole and Jessica ended up still together. And then last but not least, the yellow tribe, Soko, which is Ryan, Allie, Chrissy, JP, and Rourke. And I think they were the tribe that we spent the least amount of time with this episode.
Yes. And the one thing I was thinking when they made the big deal about like the people being left on their own, I mean, these are 3 pretty good people to be in that. Like, Devin is, it played out differently, but Devin is kind of he's laid back enough that he could fit himself into that swing vote, which would potentially necessary in this one. Rourke acts a little more paranoid than I think she really is, and she's also happens to be in a tribe with people like Chrissy, JP, Ryan, that I think will be easy to work with her. And then Ben, we've seen, is very, he's not a target in a sense because he's very kind of low-key, very loyal. Like, he could easily fit into a plan of a new group. So, I don't think anybody would be in danger immediately just by being the one odd one. I think that they have I think people will utilize their number more than it being a liability to them.
Yeah, I think you're right that it's true that some players may have had a harder time in that situation than the ones who actually ended up that way. Devin and Ben both have kind of a charisma to them. They seem like they're pretty easy to get along with people, able to kind of adjust to new circumstances pretty well.
And Rourke, I think, would settled into it, but she has like the flip, and that she's with people who are going to bring her into those circumstances and not just ostracize her because it's the easy play. Like those people on her tribe are not looking for the easy out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So we went ahead and jumped right into Reward Challenge, our first episode of the season, with 2 challenges in the episode. And so this was, a reward for peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and kind of interesting. I don't know, maybe not really, just that it was just the one prize. There wasn't a second place partial prize that like they sometimes do.
Yeah.
Just not that it's a big deal, but I wonder what what prompts the decision to either do a second place or not.
Maybe this was meant for like a like a two tribe shakeup. I don't know. They had it slotted in there and then moved it around for some reason. You just never know.
For all we know, it might just be arbitrary. It's kind of like, okay, well, we're planning which challenge we're going to do in this spot. What reward is it going to be? Do we want to do a second place? Yes? No? No? Okay, it's no. I mean, that might be all it is for all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, it ultimately, the second place tribe might be a little disappointed compared to getting a little bit of something, but probably doesn't really make a big difference.
I guess did they still finish it out to the end?
No, or at the very least, they didn't show it.
Right, so they just called it after somebody won.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, because there's nothing left to win.
Right. Now, for all we know, they did film them finishing. You could imagine some contestants, anyway, being interested in wanting to finish the puzzle. But especially with a puzzle finish, it's kind of like, how long are you going to wait if it ends up taking them a long time?
Yeah, when there's nothing to be gained from it.
Yeah, yeah. So they didn't show it, even if maybe, whether they did it or not, they didn't show it. But so we ended up, it was moving the thing, this heavy block thing through that puzzle, and then under the net was pretty physical. And we had Ben, Lauren, and Cole kind of powering through the first step with untangling the ropes. Wait, did I confuse the two? I did. I think I was describing the immunity challenge. So the first one had the ropes
tangle themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they had to hook the sled and pull that to them, and then the puzzle. Yeah, so that's what it was. I was describing the other one. But in this case, though, we had still, it was, Probst in his commentary was focusing on the teamwork of, two of the three tribes had people who didn't really know each other and having to do something that requires a lot of teamwork, coordination as they try to untangle those ropes, moving over and through each other. But what we had was Ben, Lauren, and Cole getting through that part faster, but then starting to lose the lead later to Ryan, Cole, and Rourke. Ultimately, though, it was Red first to start the puzzle, and then ultimately winning as well. One weird thing that kind of caught my ear as it went by is at one point Probst saying the biggest reward of the season, which struck me a little weird.
Yeah.
It was kind of felt like a throwaway comment, but it was strange just because it seems like I wouldn't even call this the biggest reward so far. Even if that's what he meant, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess they're getting a lot of peanut butter, but, compared to a fishing kit.
Yeah, I guess because don't they get to take a bunch of it back?
Yeah, so they got a bunch of sandwiches, and then they had like a big jar of peanut butter and a big jar of jelly and several loaves of bread, which is significant to be sure. But
yeah, and I have
more than the fishing kit.
Biggest reward of the season. He meant biggest reward yet. I think he did mean that, but
yeah,
I agree that it's arguable that a fishing kit could be more of a reward. But I get it.
So I don't know if it's a big deal. I don't know why Luna is so determined to whiff at me right now, but it's fine. I don't think it's even picking up on the microphone. But yeah, she's just at my feet, just making little noises, and then she just did it again in response to my making the noise. So we have at the after the challenge, we have the new Yawa tribe bonding over sandwiches. We have Ben talking about needing to earn the respect and gain some trust on his new tribe. He's very proactive in doing so. Good on him. He's showing himself to be a good player so far. Jessica finds a little secret advantage thing in her bag of chips and makes a goofy little joke about how it looked almost like a chip. I almost ate it. And then we see a picture and it's like,
doesn't look anything like a chip.
Not really. Not kind of at all. So that was weird. I don't know. Like, Jessica has this really sort of naive young energy. Kind of is almost like middle school level. But that said, I don't even like when I say that it maybe sounds like criticism, but I don't know. I kind of like it. I mean, she's just got an innocence to her that's kind of endearing.
Yeah.
Even when it comes down to goofy little jokes like pretending that the thing looked like a potato chip. Anyway, so it's kind of an interesting advantage, though, because it's obviously a variation on the one from earlier in the season, but instead of being saving someone, it is blocking someone from voting, but with that same caveat of if your tribe doesn't go, it has to be used this time. And so you would give it to someone, whoever on the losing tribe.
Right. So I didn't understand this correctly at first.
I think I had the same question, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was going to say I didn't understand that it was going to block a vote no matter what. You just chose whether you were at tribal or not. Like you could block a vote from another person's tribal.
Oh, like
that's what it ended up doing. But I thought you would be giving it to someone to be able to block a vote.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that is the same question that I had essentially, which is, so she ends up giving it to Devin, but the question being, does that mean she is blocking Devin's vote, or is she giving Devin the ability to block someone else's vote?
Right. And what I thought was happening was that she was giving Devin that ability. And I had to go back and rewind it and re-watch the actual wording of the clue to see, because I just totally, because that caught me off guard when he opened it and I thought he was going to get to stop a vote. And I was like, wow, this is going to get really interesting because you got the idol, you got vote stopping. And then it was just like, oh, he doesn't get to vote.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's different than I thought. And she must have known that, because it makes sense why she would block his vote, because he is the swing vote essentially over there. So if that, you essentially blow up everybody's plans, put two people head to head, you know.
Didn't she? Well, I mean, maybe well, let's talk more about the strategy of it when we get to that point. But I think that the episode may have been trying to play a little bit coy to have like us be surprised along with Devin. Maybe
that makes
like
me feel
so
less
they. Yeah, because I had the same question for one, and I feel like when she first explained it, what I thought it meant was what it ultimately meant, you know, what it ended up meaning. But then in some of the later discussions, it almost sounded like it was the other way. So I wasn't sure going in, like right up until he opened it, I didn't know 100% whether it was going to say, you now have the ability to block someone's vote, or if it was going to say, your vote is blocked. Because, yeah, they definitely didn't make it clear, and it's possible that they that was deliberate. But I mean, if that's the case, I almost feel like
I could see it being deliberate, because it was ultimately, when you look back on it, it was inconsequential. His vote wouldn't have mattered in what ended up being the outcome. So if you kind of already knew that going in, you would want to make that a bigger, more interesting piece of it, instead of having your secret thing essentially fail twice. You know, it got used this time. It just didn't have any consequence on what the outcome was.
I could definitely understand the appeal of wanting to highlight his surprise at opening what he assumes is an advantage, which actually turns, you know, we actually have his quote, "That is not an advantage."
Yes.
So just, you know, wanting that moment and to highlight it, and having maybe a little bit of confusion about exactly how it's going to work, maybe is a way of trying to play that up a little bit. But anyway, though, she immediately goes and tells Cole, and she tells him in front of Mike, which I was a little bit surprised by. But she, you know, that's her call. But then for the second time, I wonder here if this is a little bit on her for not being sufficiently clear the last time that she didn't like that he went and told people, other people, you know, after, you know, like at least that time, at least the first time, it was his secret to share. This time it was hers.
I think there's a lot of complexities to this. I think, her interest in him and like their bond, I think, yes, we've seen him kind of say like, oh yeah, she's like funny and cute.
Mm-hmm.
She's the one that really is like, if you think back, has been like driving this. I don't think he thinks that they are as tight as she does.
Yeah.
So that I think is impacting it, is that he's just not even considering that. Like, he's just like, oh yeah, like Jessica's cool. But then he also seems to not make these, like, he's getting this weird reinforcement of like, hey, it worked out well to build trust by telling people my secrets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to just keep doing that because that worked out well once. And so he's able to disconnect all that. And then, and you're right, I think she probably wasn't sufficiently clear. Don't do that again. But he's also just not paying attention to that.
Right. Yeah. Like, from a certain point of view, you could argue that, well, see, again, it comes down to the idea, though, is like, are we talking about she shared a secret with him and then he shouldn't have broken her confidence? Or are we talking about it being a good or bad strategy decision? Because those are kind of separate conversations, but they overlap in this case.
Yeah, I think in this particular one, the answer is the same,
Yeah, which is, no, he shouldn't have done that for both conversations.
Both reasons. He should not have been around telling
but like this whole plot line plays out like one of those live action Disney shows for tweens, like Hannah Montana or something like that. I mean, that's kind of the level of sophistication that the characters are acting on throughout this whole bit. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, her feelings are hurt because this guy she has a crush on betrayed her confidence, and he didn't do it to be mean. He did it because he's a doofus. And but she doesn't want to say anything because she doesn't want him to, I guess, be mad. She's worried about his feelings. And then in the meantime, we have everyone else negotiating around this information. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm entertained. But yeah, this is not Shakespeare right now.
No.
But yeah, so she tells Cole in front of Mike, and then he goes, and his explanation to the camera is, I really liked how she just was very open and trusting with this information, so I'm going to follow her example by just telling everybody. And so as soon as he tells Ben and Lauren, I'm like, what? You have just erased the value of this information as a secret. Like, we talked in the past about how these sorts of advantages have kind of two stages of power. One is the actual official use of them, but the other is the knowledge, the advanced knowledge of having it, which allows you to make strategic decisions.
Right.
And he just erased that part by letting everybody know.
Yeah, there are a couple of times in this episode that I don't think there wasn't a lot of long-term strategic leveraging in a couple of decisions here. They were short-term wins and feel-goods. Like, yeah, Cole feels great, and he won't, in the short term, like, hey, he shared the advantage. He built trust with his new tribe. Like,
he's showing off, like yeah.
And later, we'll dive into the idle use and the way in which to get it all done. And yeah, it ended up working, but like, I don't know that was like a great long-term like play.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we won that battle, I guess.
Right. It's kind of like fist pumping, I told you so. And we kind of want to say, no, you guessed, and 50-50, it turned out you were right.
In a situation that you created specifically for this outcome.
Yeah.
That didn't necessarily be the way that this needed to go.
Right. Part of the danger was the danger that you created.
Yes.
But yeah. Anyway, that's later though. So Lauren, hearing about this thing, is kind of first suspicious, just even like, is this even true? And Ben says, like, well, he didn't have to volunteer this information, but I mean, it's like, that doesn't mean it's true. It could still be a story, right? Like, you could be just trying to throw us off the scent of something else. But at the same time, he also does not seem like someone who's working on that many levels. So Lauren is kind of like, well, thank you for telling me. Now I'm going to proceed to use that information for my best interest. And because I suspect that there's a group of people, if left to their own devices on this tribe, that might try to vote me out, let's try to turn that around a little bit. Right. And so we come back to them later. But meanwhile,
that's one of the things. Like you're discussing it, but it's important to remember at this point, they still could all be going to a tribal council with this advantage that they now all know about.
Yeah.
Which leads to some interesting maneuvering, and that's what you said. Lauren caught on to that. Cole clearly did not.
Yeah. Well, and plus, it's just one thing, like, if they had had a discussion and decided that the way they wanted to use that information was to tell everybody, then fine. But they clearly were not on the same page.
No.
But meanwhile, over at the Soko tribe, the Yellow tribe, we have Rourke talking about being the lone healer and being a little disappointed just because she felt very close with the healer tribe, felt like they were tight, they were doing well in challenges, it was a good place to be, and now she's not only not in that situation anymore, but she's also the only one. Although I feel like her position didn't stand out as much to me as Ben and who was the Devin, yeah. Maybe just because we didn't spend as much time with that tribe. But also,
this is what maybe I talked about earlier. I think the people on her tribe are less likely to utilize. Like they're not looking for the easy out. The people that she's working with are more interested in bringing her, potentially using her, so it doesn't stand out. Yes, we didn't see as much, but she's also not as much on the outs because they're going to very easily they're going to look to use her as an advantage as opposed to this is just a quick win.
Yeah. So we also have most of of all of the time we spent with this tribe, which was not very much. We had a little bit of that, but then we also had Ryan getting the opportunity to connect with Chrissy, and that was a lot of fun. I kind of like them as potential allies. Although one thing that just read a little bit strange to me, and maybe this was just, our misunderstanding, but the way it's described in there and the way she sort of reflects on it is this assumption that, oh, he just saw something in me back on that boat. And that talking about it in that context, and I'm kind of like, well, we kind of assumed what he saw you do is puke after the challenge.
Yes. There's some revision going on there, but it's allowable.
Yeah. And we can certainly see how that would probably not be the spin Ryan would give when explaining his decision.
Right.
He could probably rightly understand that that's not the best foot forward.
You were the weak link, so I gave you the thing.
Yes, I thought that if you were potentially in danger, that giving it to you would cause trouble.
Yeah.
Nope. That said, obviously that was all based on first impressions anyway, but I like that it had a payoff here where two people who potentially could be good allies now have a reason to be.
Yes, especially since she just pocketed it at the original one. It's nice to see that there is something that comes of this. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, if Devin makes it to a point where he can find out that his vote was blocked.
Yeah.
Will there be, you know,
well, there's 5 people who know who had it.
Yeah, plenty of people who know what happened.
Yeah.
So, you know, in a merge situation or even a 2-tribe thing, if you're trying to win him over and she is a potential target, you know, you can say, hey.
Yeah.
Blocked your vote. You know?
Yeah. But, you know, so that said, what we just discussed there was really all the time we spent with the new Soko tribe, other than the challenge itself.
Right.
Back at Livu, the new blue tribe, we have Allie expressing her frustration of like, of all people, like of everybody here, if there was one person I would have wished was not going to be on the same tribe as me, it was B. Allen. Yeah. Although, I don't know, I mean, you know, obviously he got voted out, but I think that his behavior was kind of, maybe he just recognized that the situation had changed, but he was kind of on better behavior.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, what he did not get him voted out.
No, it was. I suspect that if Devin's vote had not been blocked, he was going to go with them and vote out Joe. He would have voted for Joe, and then if Joe played his idol, then you know, still play out that way. But
that was going to happen as well. They had successfully negotiated with Devin to, you know, build this group, and then again, but the other group also wasn't really trying that hard to build a relationship with Devin, because Joe decided. Which I think we, you know, if we're not really there yet, I guess so.
No, well, we're almost there.
Because it was right after the challenge that he did that. So
yeah, so basically, we started with Ashley talking about being frustrated to have Alan on her side, but we proceed to the conversation where he's kind of saying, "Look, I know you and I didn't necessarily get along before, but I recognize the situation we're in now where we've got to stick together, and I'm prepared to do that. I won't flip on you." And, you know, I think it was the right thing to say. And she's kind of like, I don't know that I can trust him in terms of him being a reliable person, but I can certainly recognize that he recognizes that it really is in both their best interests if they stick together.
Yes. Yeah. So she starts with that. And I think, you know, he wasn't reliable, like, long term, but in what he said, he always did what he said, and he said what he meant. But that's what made him unreliable, is that sometimes he would start saying things that the rest of the group that wasn't the direction they wanted to go.
Yeah, he's not dishonest. He's just unpredictable.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, I don't know that she fully came around to that, but I think they did work together well once she at least gave herself permission to be like, yeah, we both recognize this. It's nice that he recognizes this as well, and let's do our best. Let's work together in this situation.
Yeah. It did seem like they were prepared to go into this as reforged allies, and it just unfortunately was not to last for reasons unrelated to their relationship. But in the meantime, we cut immediately from there to Desi, Joe, and Devin kind of having their initial conversations, and Joe just immediately jumps into, I'm going to make up this story that Ashley and Alan approached us to get you out. And he kind of overplayed his hand, obviously, because Devin, although he couldn't be sure, he was a little wary. His immediate reaction is, I'm not sure that's true.
Right. So this, I think, is the evidence that what Joe ultimately created was, you know, we've talked about this before, where you do something that you want, and then you go and make the strategy later. Except that he actually did create a successful strategy out of this. And that the idea is,
It did only work. Well, yeah.
So I'm going to get them all to target me because I'm going to act crazy, and then they will all vote for me, and I will use the idol for me, and they will go home. Like, that's ultimately what he decided was the strategy, and which is why I was like, that's not really long-term thinking. Like, that is a very short-term win.
It definitely is. It's all about it's all about getting it done right now. But not only was the whole victory predicated on the fact that he already had an idol that now he doesn't have anymore.
Yes.
But he also made everybody irritated with him and aware that he can't be trusted.
Right.
That said, if you're going to make a move, this was not a bad time to do it.
No, if you thought that you couldn't get Devin, then, and you have to be guessing who's going to get voted out, like, you could use this strategy of like, well, let's try to make sure it's me. It didn't sound that far thought out, though. It sounded like he overplayed. Like, sounded like he went to Devin and overplayed his pitch to where it didn't work, and he was like, "Well, shit, we're never going to get Devin now, so I'm just going to start acting crazy."
Yeah. Well, and the fact that he didn't brief Desi on the plan. I mean, on the one hand, like, you can rationalize later, well, I wanted your reactions to be genuine to sell the idea. But on the other hand, she's like, bullshit. You should have fucking told me. Are we partners here or what?
Yeah.
And so that's so yeah, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but to be sure, the idea that Joe just went hard with this completely made up story right off the bat, like, before we even have the challenge, this is before it's known that they're going to have to vote someone out. It's he overplayed his hand, and Devin was suspicious, and all Devin had to do was go over to Ashley and Alan and say, so Joe told me this. Is that right? And they're just, all they have to do is like, what? No? And they come across as immediately more trustworthy because they are the ones telling the truth. Now, at that point, we could say that, Devin is just having to rely on his own insight and judge of character. But at the same time, I mean, I think we can all put ourselves in Devin's shoes and say, which of these two stories sounds like the most plausible right now? Why would you be targeting Devin to vote out Devin? That's dumb. He's the obvious swing vote. Why would you target him? That's silly. There's no strategy where that makes sense. Now, I mean, it's, setting up suspicion is one thing, but
it only makes sense if, for whatever reason, the four of them decide that they want to work together and just get the easy, like, it's an easy vote. But there hasn't been time to, like, talk about that. Like, it's so early. Like, that could eventually be a thing, like we've always talked about. Like, if someone starts wielding the swing vote thing, there would be a time where after the challenge, if they're actually going to vote, they could go over and be like, y'all just want to get rid of Devin? Like,
yeah.
And we can work together?
Yeah, like if he's walking around camp saying, okay, you two pairs, you both want my vote, so what will you do for me if I vote for you? What will you do for me if I vote for you? Like, that right. Won't fly.
Because you could eventually extrapolate and say, like, Devin also doesn't have that many allies. Like, so there is no reason to empower him as the swing vote unless we just want to damage each other. So why don't we not do that? That would be the only reason Devin would become a target. So, right. But to launch into that so early is just ridiculous. Like, let it play out. Like, take a step back. You know?
Yeah. But like he came into this game like defining his approach as based on full steam ahead. Let's go hard right away.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So in the meantime, over back at the Red Tribe, Yawa, Ben and Lauren noting, funny how Cole and Jessica are always together. We see them going out fishing. You're like, wait, weren't we all gonna go fishing? But now they've just gone off by themselves? So in the meantime, it's a good opportunity to kind of go to Mike and say, so did you know about this advantage thing? Because we heard about this advantage thing. And for Mike suddenly to be in this position of like, well, yeah, I knew, but you weren't supposed to know. So how come you know? So if you know, first, let me briefly pretend like I didn't know, but I did. But you weren't supposed to know. So obviously something's happening that wasn't supposed to happen. What's up with that? So that was kind of fun. And the idea that he just immediately, like he straightforward, he's just goes straight out to Jessica and says, so how come they know about the advantage? They know about the advantage? Yeah. Well, but I only told you and Cole. Hey, Cole.
Yeah.
What? And just the panic on his face and like his initial attempt to like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. How do they know? I don't know. But, you know, I think he rightly realized that that was not making any sense. He was just digging himself in deeper at that point. Because, like, from her perspective, only Cole and Mike knew. And Mike was the one who just came to me to say, hey, how come this information got out?
Right. And he didn't say in a, like, sketchy way of, like, where it seemed like he had just told them and it was like, oh, jeez, I just told them. I probably should go pretend that I didn't tell them, but they knew. Yeah. It didn't come across. Like, that's one of the things that it's, like, funny, like, when you see this stuff, it, like, sometimes telling the truth is, like, you don't need to know all the special signals and FBI stuff. Like, sometimes people who are honest and people who are dishonest, like, sometimes you can just tell which one is the honest one.
Yeah. So I will go ahead and give Cole credit for owning up instead of just continuing to dig. I mean, at a certain point.
Yeah, that he's being dishonest. He doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And, which is, I want to give him credit for that too. It's not just recognizing it was a bad move, but actually being a good person and being like, I don't want to be the guy that just keeps lying about this. Like,
right.
I'm just gonna apologize and move on.
Yeah. You know, and like that said, you know, like, and as she kind of explains to the camera later, you know, it's like, even if there was no malicious intent, it's still a betrayal. It's kind of like, you and I are allies, and that's why I shared this special information with you. And then you just went and told everybody. And again, this is like middle school drama of like, oh, I can't believe you told the whole football team that we made out behind the bleachers. You know what I mean? Like, that's what this felt like, this whole sequence. But that said, I mean, like, you know, even though she still has kind of this endearing naivete to her, the broad strokes of what she's feeling are entirely reasonable to feel and appropriate for the situation. He did betray her confidence. And she is probably right to sort of say, I think I maybe let my infatuation tell me that he was a good ally, and maybe he's actually not. We can kind of hope that he's going to do better now that he's been called on it, but he obviously, he probably should have known before.
Right.
He shouldn't have had to learn this lesson. It's not complicated.
No, and what makes me happy for her is, like you said, she had this naivety, and now this is, you know, has opened her eyes a little bit. And it doesn't mean that she's not going to keep working with him.
Mm-hmm.
She's just not going to rely on that as her, like, number one strategy. She will start to play the game a little bit more start to think about things a little bit more discerningly, which I'm excited for because I do generally like her.
Mm-hmm. I like her more as the season progresses. That all pretty much brings us to the immunity challenge, and this is the one with the sled that has to go through the little slidey puzzle and then under the net, which was kind of cool. I liked that part of it. It just seemed like that. Yeah, that looks difficult. It's also kind of visually interesting. I kind of liked that element. And then you have sort of a randomizing element with the keys. And like poor Ashley has the bad luck of it just literally being the very last key on the ring that she could try before she finally gets the one that works. I was irritated during the puzzle section, though, that the camera angle they chose wouldn't allow us to see how close the solutions were. Just the angle would show us one direction, but not the cross piece, so we couldn't see if it matched or not.
Oh, yeah, I guess I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, so it wasn't until they put the last piece in and said, yeah, and then it cut to an overhead shot, and it's like, oh, yes, okay, now we can see that the solution is correct. We couldn't see it before from the angle that they were showing it. So, I don't know. It's a minor complaint, but I couldn't help but think that seems like that could have been planned better.
or maybe that was a purposeful thing that we don't know about.
Yeah, well, they built a challenge and maybe just recognized afterwards that they would have needed a crane, and so probably that overhead shot we got was filmed afterwards, like later, and just insert. So they decided that they didn't want to have a crane in there to show the overhead while the challenge was going on, so they just made do with their ground level cameras and went and insert the crane shot afterwards. That's my guess.
That would make sense, actually.
Yep, from a production standpoint.
Yep.
But in the meantime, Yawa Red is now the new dominant tribe, it would seem. They won the peanut butter and jelly, and now that they won first place in the immunity challenge as well. But then Soko, the yellow tribe, gets second place, which means Levu Blue going to tribal council. And some of this we've talked about already, but we talk about Alan kind of being demoralized by the loss, like the tribes he's been on so far have not been doing great as far as the challenges go, which, as a professional athlete, that's got a sting, that he wants to win. He's a competitive guy. But he also kind of recapitulates the issue for us, which is that Devin is the swing vote. And here's where we get the other half of Devin going and asking them, and them saying, no, that's all. Yep. We weren't targeting you. Why would we do that? You're the one that we want to lobby to get one of them out because there's two of them. But here's let's see. Devin seems like he is immediately on board with them. He talks about, I don't like having snakes around. But in the meantime, though, he and Ashley are not subtle enough to prevent Desi and Joe from realizing they're connecting, which probably means they don't believe their story anymore. So now what? And so I think the idea of trying to make sure the idol isn't wasted by hoping that they will vote for him is interesting from, like we talked about, from this immediate short-term strategy perspective. But now he also, first of all, there was the risk of overplaying the hand again, where they would say, why is he provoking us to be wanting to target him so aggressively? Yes. That's suspicious.
Which then you figures out.
Yeah.
And
Even though, I mean, ultimately, I would guess that I don't think that they ultimately really did think that. I don't think they did think he had an idol. It was a reasonable question to ask, and it was a potential flaw in the plan. But I think from her perspective, it was less about, I really think it's true that you were too confident and they know you have an idol now. I think it was more just her trying to cover her own ass, like, I
yeah.
don't. Okay, we've got some troll in the chat. That sucks. Let's block them. Block. There you go. Yep. So yeah, they're gone. Such a weird. Yeah. Never mind. That's unimportant. So, where were we? Oh, right. I think from Desi's perspective, she's just sort of saying, this is going to be a gamble either way. We can't know for sure which way they're going to go. But if there's an idol in play, I want it played on me. That way, either it works out and I'm safe, or it doesn't work out and I'm still safe and I can play for the next day. It's like, so I think her whole pitch of like, you overplayed your hand, now they'll think you have an idol. It's possible, but I think she may have been overplaying her insecurity, or not overplaying. She was deliberately exaggerating her insecurity there because she wanted him to play his idol for her.
Yes. Just like I think he deliberately exaggerated that he found a tell in their plan because he decided he just really wanted to make sure he played it for himself and didn't care it was the right or the wrong thing. He just wanted to make sure he was safe.
Well, right. Like, they're both in the same position there, which is recognizing we are not 100% sure which way this is going to go. So they both want to be the one who's for sure safe. Now, that said, I do think that Joe would have played it for Desi if he really believed that they were going to vote for her.
Yes.
That said, I also think that he was going to be predisposed to think they were going to vote for him regardless of any other evidence.
Yes. And I don't think that, like, Ashley, like, looking at him weird or whatever he tried to say was, like, when he was going to play it for Desi, but then he saw what, the way that she looked, and he knew and he got it right. I told you, I think he just got up there and was like, yeah, man, I'm playing this on me. And then spun all that, He doesn't feel like he's playing.
Well, yeah, it's a very he's playing very fast and loose, and it worked out for him here. All right, we've got
I'm not seeing these chats.
Well, good. I'm blocking them right away, and it's deleting their messages. That's why I'm paying attention. So anyway, So what we're doing here is looking at someone who is playing hard and fast. He's just doing stuff, and it only worked here because he had an idol. And now he doesn't have an idol anymore.
Right.
Now, that's not to say, I mean, you still have to give credit that he knew when he needed to use it. It worked out. And to some extent, in terms of where the whole setup here is, yeah, we've got a determined person here with multiple accounts, it seems obvious. We've got, he is just doing everything he can, but this was the time to do it because we had 2 versus 2 in a swing vote, and he saw that it was going to go the other way.
Yes. but he also created the assurance that it was going to go the other way by
his handling of that initial situation is what pushed it that way. Like if he and Desi had played it differently and not made Devin so suspicious, maybe it wouldn't have been such an obvious decision. So yeah, Desi is kind of stuck with him, but you know, hey, I like that she seems game to play the hands that, you know, play the cards that she's been dealt. You know what I mean? Like she could maybe recognize, Joe, what are you doing? You're kind of blowing both of us up here. This is not the way I would have advised we play this if you had consulted me. But yeah, it's but you know, at the same time, like you see her expression, her demeanor in the final tribal council, like even with the whole thing of him going up there deliberating, no, I guess I'll play it for me. You can see her just going, fine, okay.
Right, and that's where he comes back and like tries to explain that like when he was deliberating, like he read it in Ashley's eyes or something, that like which way she was voting, and that's why he did that, you know.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, and yeah, like so he's gonna fist pump and say, I knew it, I told you, and that sort of thing. And she's like, I still wanted you to play it for me, and you kind of said you were gonna, so you didn't, but here we are. All right.
So we'll move on to next week, and we'll have the 2 to 1 advantage, but we'll see what happens, you know?
Yeah. I did like her handling of that whole situation, though. I feel like, given that she has been kind of involuntarily paired with someone who's playing like Joe is, she's making the best of it. I like that. So let's see. I don't know. Did we have anything else that we needed to cover? I feel like we kind of got most of it.
We got all of it as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we kind of even already covered the idea of the secret advantage, and that is not an advantage. We kind of discussed that. Oh, the one item that we didn't talk about that we can maybe discuss a little bit is Jessica's decision to give it to Devin, and the idea of, is it smart to give it to the swing vote, which certainly kind of causes chaos. But the way she was explaining it was more like she wanted to help the healers. And so why wouldn't she block the vote of one of the 2 heroes instead of the swing vote?
Yeah, maybe she did think that it was, maybe she thought it was which is why it was confusing. Maybe that's part of why it was confusing, is that she was misunderstanding and thought that she was, but even still, why wouldn't you give it to one of the ones that you, from the tribe you wanted to help?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that she kind of, you know, it's a situation where you don't know for sure how it's all going to play out. And so she's kind of just, maybe it was less about thinking that element of the strategy through and more about Devin is one of the, you know, the other tribe. And so maybe she just kind of knew who he was better. You know, so she's like, okay, well, I have to give it to someone. I know Devin is not one of the healers. I'll just give it to him. And maybe she didn't necessarily have the armchair Survivor fan perspective we have of saying that we have, we have this perspective of seeing, okay, it's 2 and 2 and a swing vote, but maybe it was not that obvious to her.
Right. And you know, when you look back at how it actually unfolded with, you know, and obviously you can't have her, she couldn't have thought through this. It wouldn't have mattered, like, who she gave it to. Like, if she had given it to, if she had blocked one of the Is Joe a hero? Or Joe and them are the hero or the healer? They're the heroes, right?
Yeah, they were the healers.
Healers.
Joe
So
and yeah.
yeah. So if she had given it to one of the heroes, it would have just blocked a vote that was ultimately inconsequential. If she had given it to the healers, the hero would have still Alan would have still been voted out 1-0. You know, it didn't matter, but
yeah. But she also had no way of knowing if the idol was going to be in play.
Right. Yeah, I'm not criticizing her decision based on this. I'm just also saying we can litigate it all we want, but ultimately it didn't matter because of the way that Joe played it. So
right. Yep. So I think that we covered everything. Alan was not one of my favorites from the early first couple of episodes, but he's kind of, like I said, he was sort of on much better behavior this episode. And so I was not happy to see him go exactly. I don't know, honestly, the way Joe was acting, he's kind of entertaining, but I feel like in my subconscious, I was rooting for him to somehow get voted out. Like if he had actually played it for Desi, but then it turned out they were actually voting for him. Like
that's what I was hoping for. If he went out
that way, I think that would have been the best case outcome as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, he seems he's going to be entertaining because he's going to play all out like this, but he's not thinking through these things and like making good decisions. And we have a lot of people who are a lot of really good people on this season who are thinking things through from a very high level perspective, even as new players. And that's exciting. And he is not one of them,
Mm-hmm. Yep. So Alan's a good sport in his final words. He handles all that really well. Blames his fate on the immunity idol, which he's like, yep. It would have been Joe otherwise. It would have been a tie, I guess. And then they would have had to figure something out with Devin's vote blocked.
Right. It would have, yeah, if you took all of the things out of the equation, it would have been a tie. Or it would have been, they would have done it. But yeah, this was a good episode for the producer, like good timing for them to introduce this new secret because we don't know, there's some weird tiebreaker thing that's also a secret.
Yeah.
We talked about that in the first episode, and it's like, we don't know how the tiebreaker works. So it's almost like, then you start to wonder, like,
are they trying to force that? Because, for example, blocking one vote when you've just split the tribes into 3 sets of 5, any blocked vote raises the possibility of a tie.
Yes. And then if you can't understand Jessica's decision, do you start to think like, was there a confessional where they asked some leading questions that they didn't put in here?
Possible. Yeah. Possible. I find it kind of in my own head just as likely that she kind of just threw a dart at the wall blindfolded. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes, Occam's razor would suggest that, but
yeah. But in any event,
they're throwing these things out there. If that is the case, they are determined to get a tie at some point.
Yeah. Well, I definitely like these things in concept. You know what I mean? Like even if this one was sort of disrupted by the idol play, and then the other one sort of wasn't necessary, and so didn't get played at all. But I still like the concept and how they change what people are thinking about.
Yes, and it was nice, like we said, to see the payoff of what happened with the first one, even though it was pocketed, to still have a human connection later on based on it. And so there's a residual effect to these things because of them having to be passed on to others. So I'm excited because they're going to have one hit at one point. Like one of these is going to make an impact, and it's going to be really fun.
Yeah.
I have to keep
I had a lot of fun just with this one, just with Devin saying that is not an advantage. Just made me laugh.
When he said it, bro, that is not an advantage. advantage.
Yeah. Well, and just the sneakiness of it, of giving him something that says secret advantage on it, and then he can't read it until the very moment when he's about to unwrap it, saying, "This is going to be awesome. This is not awesome." That was pretty great. I liked that a lot.
Yes.
So next time, we raise the possibility of an all-girl alliance. And then we also have Devin apparently wanting, now that it's, potentially 2-2, he decides, he would rather it still be a tie and stick with Ashley than to join up with Desi and Joe.
Also part of the repercussions of Joe acting like a jerk.
Yep.
For the whole back half of the episode to get people to vote for him, quote.
Yeah. Yep. And he does not seem like the type that is capable of the necessary damage control.
No, and Devin seems, in what we know of him, to be principled enough that, he would rather risk it that way, if Ashley's on board with that, so.
Yep. All right. So I think that'll do it for this time.
Yep.
So thank you, everybody, for listening and or watching. No thank you to this asshole in the chat who's deciding to spam our little YouTube live chat. And it's obviously the same... who knows what they, how they spend their time, but it's obviously the same person logging on repeatedly with multiple accounts after I block each one individually. Someone apparently gets their kicks just trolling random YouTube videos. That's a bizarre and kind of pathetic way to spend your time. So I just blocked you. So if you're still watching, find some other shop. All right. If you want clutched pearls, you'll see I'm not wearing any pearls. So, so we'll all, those of you actually interested, thanks for listening and or watching, and we'll be back next week.
Yes.